recreational playground for Southern California residents and the primary source of water for the area. From here, the Colorado River winds south, forming a natural border between California and Arizona until it flows into the Gulf of California. And this is downtown Parker, a city of 5,000, founded in 1912, an oasis in the desert, and this week it serves as a setting for the SCORE Parker 400 off-road race. ESPN, the world's leader in motorsports, presents Speed World. $30,000 people are expected to be on hand for this annual happening as this sleepy little town of 5,000, Parker, Arizona, becomes the off-road racing capital of the world. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the 15th annual SCORE Parker 400, the first of 6 televised off-road desert races this year on ESPN. I'm Marty Reed, and working alongside Jerry Garrett.
Marty, I'm really pumped about this year because I think we're going to see a tremendous level of competition. We've got new teams, new drivers. At this race, we've got a full house, 425 entries.
And we also have 2 brand new trucks in Class 8.
Yeah, Steve McEachern and Scoop Vessels have come out with trucks that are just going to knock everybody on their ears. Chevrolet has built the truck that everybody is talking about this year.
And mentioning new faces, Jeff McPherson.
Well, Jeff cut his teeth in this racing, went IndyCar racing. Now he's come back. I think he's going to have a real successful year in these trucks.
So fasten your seatbelts and get ready to eat a little dust as we go off-road racing at the Parker 400. And speaking of Frank Vessels, this is the Class 8 truck that Scoop will be making his first start this weekend. Jerry Garrett is with Frank now.
One of the most revolutionary trucks in racing last year belonged to Scoop Vessels. It won 3 races, but he retired it. He's come back with an even faster truck. Why, Scoop?
Well, what people don't realize is all the work that goes in between the seasons, and you have to keep up with these guys out here. That gets to be a job in itself. But what happens in between seasons is you work your rear end off to try to get sponsors like BF Goodrich, Chevrolet, Mobil 1, and you try to get together your crew, which this year, John Nelson from Nelson Racing got together with me, and he built this car, which he owns, and allows me to drive it. So it's going to be a good year for us.
What's new about this truck?
Basically, it's a whole new, different design. It's got the new body style from Chevrolet, the suspension that Nelson & Nelson puts in it, and the overall handling are tremendous. And I think it's, well, I know it's even faster than the last car, and that was awful fast.
Well, this truck has a lot of hearts beating in this class, and if Class 8 is dominated by one truck this year, it's going to be this revolutionary Chevrolet.
Today's Parker 400 is brought to you by BF Goodrich TAs and the new all-weather CompTA. Goodrich TAs, we make your car perform. And by Dodge Cars and Trucks. When it's got to be right, it's got to be a Dodge. And by Quaker State Motor Oil. The big Q stands for quality, always has, always will. We'll be back with the start of today's race right after this.
Bob Strange, BF Goodrich test engineer.
The trick to building great all-terrain tires is making them as good off-road as on. All-terrain TAs from BF Goodrich are tested in some of the roughest off-road situations in the world. I believe TA radials are the best performance tires in the world, and I torture them to keep them that way.
BF Goodrich TAs, tested tough to make your truck perform.
This is the California starting line as we return to the SCORE Parker 400. It's an area about 13 miles west of Parker and just east of the junction of California's Highways 62 and 95. The contestants will make one lap of the 110-mile course here and then move over to Arizona for a pair of 96-mile laps to finish the race. Now, this area in California was once used by General George Patton for tank maneuvers, and open mini truck favorite Roger Mears calls it one of the best testing grounds for suspension systems on the entire off-road circuit.
car number 201, a 1986 VW-powered Chenoweth driven by brothers Ed and Tim Herbst of Las Vegas.
And the race is underway as the Score Parker 400 gets the official green flag. Now, number 204, the Coors Light Raceco VW of Steve Serapis and Davey Richardson, one of the most competitive teams in the class in recent years. Then you've got the 205 entry, the brothers of Tom and Steve Martin. They're getting ready to start. They're from Anaheim, California. Steve will start off on the wheel at the opening lap.
You notice there's a speed limit sign posted there on one of the telephone poles. You'll notice, too, that it's completely ignored today.
It certainly will be. 211 car is that of defending overall champion Bob Gordon. He teamed with son Robbie to win here last year, but this year Tim Crabtree will share the driving. Robbie has stepped up to the Class 8 ranks.
Number 216, Frank Arciero Jr. and Cal Wells. Frank is moving back to the unlimited two-seat class after driving the Joe McPherson team's Class 4 Chevy last year.
And he said he just wanted to spend more time with his family, Jerry, and that he would race a reduced schedule. Found that a little bit interesting. Now, wait a minute, we got the 220 vehicle, a Las Vegas team, Brian Collins and Kenny Cox, and they're having a little bit of trouble here at the starting line. The engine has stalled, and this is where race fans, could you see this at a NASCAR event or Indy cars? Get out and push. Well, is he going to get it going? Looks like he's got it underway, and he's lost some valuable time, but at least Brian Collins is back in the race.
227 is the father and son team of Jim and Mark Temple. That's Jim at the wheel. Now let's go to Marty with defending Class 8 champion Dave Schopp.
Dave, first off, just a few minutes away from the start of the race, defending champion in Class 8. What goes through your mind right now as we start a new season?
Basically, what's going through my mind right now is this is a brand new truck. We're going to feel our way through with the thing. The truck didn't arrive till 12 o'clock last night. It's got 2 miles on it.
You're a little nervous then.
Well, no, not really. I just know what I have to do, and I know how I have to drive the thing the first 30 or 40 miles and just see what happens. We have to be a little conservative.
Number 101 is the Raceco VW of Jim Stiles and Jim Greenway. They were competitors last year in Class 10 for 615cc engines. They've teamed up to try the unlimited waters this season.
And now they're underway on the Score Parker 400. And up next will be the 104 Barbary Coast vehicle. Now, this is a Chenoweth VW. Robbie McCachran drove this car to 3 victories and Driver of the Year honors in 1986, but he's moved into the mini truck ranks. So racing dentist Bud Feldkamp and Ron Gardner will do the driving here.
Now this is Ivan Stewart at number 106, a Toyota pickup. Ivan has a new truck on the way which will utilize Toyota's 6-cylinder motor, and that's expected to debut about mid-season. Now let's go to Marty, who's got an interview here with defending Parker Class 8 champion Steve Kelly.
You know, a couple of weeks ago, it didn't look like Steve Kelly was going to be racing this year at all. What happened?
Well, Marty, we've worked it out with our sponsors, and we're back in the game. We've got a new truck, which will be ready for the Gold Coast race. So we're out here with a new old truck with new sponsor paint jobs.
How tense was it coming down the wire?
Very tight. Both Chris and I were real worried about it, but Larry Miner came back through, and our new sponsor, American Racing, is right behind us 100%.
What are your thoughts going into this race?
Well, there's a lot of new trucks out here. They've been tested. Some of them have been, some not. So we've got old reliable. We're going to just try and make it around and get for the win.
801 is a 66 Ford owned by Jim Venable of Hemet, California, with Robbie Gordon at the wheel. Rob made his debut in the truck with a good second-place finish in last year's Baja 1000. Number 800 coming up here, defending Class 8 champion Dave Schopp, who we just talked to a few minutes ago, in that new Ford built by Schopp and his crew chief, Daryl Jacques.
I guarantee you that's the cleanest that truck will be all season long, because from this point on, the dirt and the stones are going to take the toll. Speaking of taking new trucks into the desert, here's Scoop Vessels in 808, the brand new Chevy we previewed for you just a little bit earlier. And then right behind Scoop will be 809, Steve Kelly, the man we had a chance to talk with about his season. And his Chevrolet has carried the Miller American colors the last few years, but for this season, it's dressed in American racing equipment livery. Steve Kelly out to chase the dust.
Next up, here's a familiar face, 811 Walker Evans. He's always the man to beat in this class in the Barbary Coast-sponsored Goodyear Dodge Dakota.
Well, watch out. Look out, a little mud into the lens.
Now, next up, we have number 814, Steve McEachern, in a sister Chevrolet to that Scoop Vessels entry.
About the only thing that's different, really, is the paint job. And then we're going to go into Class 400, the Dodge, a perennial four-wheel drive champion, Rod Hall, with longtime partner Jim Fricker riding shotgun. Now, these two started racing together in the Jeep Club events in Hemet, California, back in the early 60s. And they're pretty much inseparable in the minds of off-road racing fans.
In fact, Fricker may be the only co-driver in the sport with his own fan club.
Absolutely. I can't think of anybody else in a lot of sports where co-drivers or crew chiefs or anything for that matter gets the kind of attention that Jim Fricker gets in this sport of off-road desert racing. Well, stay with us because we have a lot more of the Score Parker 400 from Parker, Arizona. But first this. Marty Reed and Jerry Garrett with you at the Score Parker 400 in Parker, Arizona, and we're looking as number 201, Ed and Tim Herbst go flying by.
And number 205 are the Martin brothers, Tom and Steve. Now there goes the defending Class 2 champion, Corky McMillan, in a Porsche-powered Chenoweth. And this looks like Danny Lettner, a former West Coast stock car champion, number 215.
And dust already starting to kick up, and not much breeze out here today. This looks again like, yes, it's Jim Temple, the contractor who divides his time between Las Vegas and Palm Springs.
Now, this is the first of the unlimited single-seaters, the Jim Stiles, Jim Greenway entry, with Stiles at the wheel. And coming up here, I think, yep, that's Ivan Stewart at the Toyota. He's won 3 times in the last 2 seasons and finished second to Mark McMillan in the point standings in this class last year.
You can always tell Ivan he's more sideways than straight. He's always flying. Here's our first look at the Class 8 entries out on the course itself. Robbie Gordon in 801. That's the Ford that Stan Gilbert drove to 3rd overall in last year's Nissan Mint 400. By the way, we'll carry that race here on ESPN.
Now here's Dave Schopp in that new Ford entry. Dave said he took the truck out last night and did a mile of testing, and he found some suspension problems that he and the crew tried to correct this morning. And Marty, he seems to be just feeling the truck out at the moment.
Well, you could tell from our interview earlier that he does not have the confidence in this vehicle yet, but I'm sure he's going to get a little more confident by the next race, that's for sure. Now we're into 404. That's the AC Delco Chevrolet of Jerry McDonald. And Jerry drove in four-wheel drive mini truck division last year. We asked him about the difference in the classes.
The 7 4x4 is more of a real production truck. They're really limited to a lot of the production parts. You have to use the stock front end and the stock transmission and a lot of the stock frame and all of those things. And all of the 7 4x4 trucks are the mini trucks or the little trucks. Class 4 is more of a modified. It's we have to keep the cab has to remain the silhouette of a truck, and we have to use the cab. But other than that, the engine has to be in the front and in the transmission, but it's pretty much open. And so this truck has a tubular frame on it, and the engine is moved back. Suspension is all hand fabricated, and
5 is staying right with the leaders in the class. And coming up, one of the buggies. Oh, there's the man we're looking for, defending champion Bob Gordon. We show him running in front again.
Now, 216, Frank Arciero Jr. back in the buggies this year after some truck action last year we mentioned earlier. He's cutting back on his racing schedule a little bit this year because of business demands. And here's one of the more interesting vehicles out here. It's a Raceco 2-seater driven by David Chrysler and Curly Nobles. And if anyone knows how to make a Raceco chassis work, it's Chrysler, because he's the one who builds them.
Uh-oh. This looks like trouble for Dave Schopp. He and co-driver Larry Maddox have climbed out, and no one is working on the truck. That suggests the problem is terminal, Jerry.
That's highly unusual for Schopp. He's finished all but one race in the last 2 seasons, and he's had 17 straight finishes before that one DNF in the Mint 400.
Well, we'll be back with more of the Parker 400. Even if Dave Schopp won't, we certainly will. Marty Reed and Jerry Garrett with you at the Score Parker 400, and this is the Highway 95 road crossing at the upper end of the course. It's about 25 miles from the California finish line, and there is bad news here for Gail Klein and Mark Manley in 1634. They're going to have to sit and wait until the Score monitors can get traffic on the highway stopped, and it's allowing a couple of the competitors to close in on them, Jerry.
Oh, Marty, this is so aggravating. I've been in this situation before where you beat your brains out in the desert to get an advantage, and then you come up to a stop sign, you hit it wrong, and you got to sit and wait.
And if you go through the stop sign sign, of course, you're going to be penalized, if not hit, by some of the cross traffic. And look at Bailey just pounding on the dash.
Oh, and he's got a couple of his competitors right behind him now. How aggravating. Well, this is the first time today we've seen Roger Mears in the Budweiser Nissan. Roger, of course, is the older brother of Rick Mears, the Indy 500 champion. And right now, Roger's running out front in the open mini pickup class.
And coming into view for the first time, the Unlimited Baja Bugs, and that looks like John Cooley, defending class champion.
And this looks like Manny Esquera, who's definitely having some motor problems in that Ford Ranger. This year he's picked up Coors sponsorship in addition to Motorcraft.
I don't think I've ever seen Manny go this slow, and this has got to be disappointing because this is home turf for him. He's from Parker. Boy, that has got to be frustrating. Listen to that. Just struggling, trying to get through the California side and get to the pits. Well, this is 704 Larry Ragland out of Phoenix. He posted his first desert win in this race in a buggy in 1981. And prior to the start of today's event, we asked him about his strategy against both Mears and Manny Esquera.
The California side will be a much rougher side of the race. The first 100 miles over there will be pretty rough. The object over there will be to try to save the truck and try to pace yourself and not get in too big a hurry. Would be to more or less just make sure you run a nice pace without getting flats, without knocking a hole in a tire or something like that. It would be to pace yourself over there. Then once you get to Arizona, the field will sort itself out a little bit, and then from that point we'll start racing. We'll have a time to find out where everybody else is at and where the times are at, and then we'll race if we have to, and hopefully we won't have to, and we'll be able to go a little slower over there also.
Larry moved out of the buggy class into the open mini truck class about 18 months ago. He debuted this truck with a win at the Riverside Short Course Championships last August, but he's still looking for his first desert win. In '86, when the Baja 1000 ran all the way from Ensenada to La Paz down the length of the Baja California Peninsula, Ragland led every mile of the way, but lost to Roger Mears on time by 13 seconds, so he's overdue for a desert victory.
Can you imagine how frustrating that must feel, though, Jerry? You go 1,000 miles, it takes close to 24+ hours, and you lose by 13 seconds. Maybe today is his day. Well, we're back at the California finish line. The leaders are coming in, and this is the first car, 211, Bob Gordon in the Chenoweth. And right behind, it appears to be the 200. That would be Corky McMillan, defending class champion. So those two cars doing very well. And then the next car coming into view as they're coming in quickly now with some cheering from his pit crew. That's Steve Martin in 205. You can even hear him cheering. They're so happy that they're across. And then here is Jim Temple in the Temple Construction entry, number 227.
Now, unofficially, we show Gordon as the class leader, but the thing to keep in mind is that in off-road racing, as in any timed event, physical appearance can be misleading. Everyone's individual clock starts at 0 when they get the green flag, but since they were flagged off at 30-second intervals, the car in front physically is not necessarily the leader.
Well, this is back in our helicopter with Steve McEacher, 814 vehicle, another driver from the Phoenix area, and something of a mystery man in this class. He comes to the races, stays pretty much to himself, and even though he's been fast, he has had trouble in the past finishing races. So no one really knows too much about him. Right now, though, McEacher doing very well for himself. Boy, that truck runs so smoothly, Jerry. Look at it. It hardly looks like it's an uncomfortable ride at all. Now, this is the unlimited single-seat leader, Ivan Stewart, and Jerry's talking to one of the officials. And what's that going on the side of his door?
That's the time sticker, Marty. That lets the driver and his team know what time they officially finish the California loop and what time they will get to start the first of the 2 Arizona loops. Each entry has 2 hours of mandatory downtime between the finish here and the start in Arizona.
Well, now we're back with 809. That's Steve Kelly, and I got to tell you, it's going to take a while to get used to the new paint scheme after so many years with the Miller American colors.
Well, this truck is starting its 8th season of racing, Marty, and in race car years, that puts it up near mandatory retirement age. It's still fast, but the suspension is outdated, and that forces Steve to drive it as hard as it will go all the time just to keep up.
Well, he does have a new truck on the way. And right now, boy, that's a beautiful shot. You look out over the desert. Here's Larry Ragland again. We understand Larry had some problems with the power steering early in the lap, which cost him a couple of places in the standings, but the truck looks to be in good shape otherwise. And he crosses the California finish line, and Larry Ragland is home in Class 7. Well, here's the way they get over to the California, or from California, I should say, to Arizona. They load them up on the trailers for the trip over to the Arizona starting line. Now, it's all done in a very orderly fashion, and for good reason, too. The idea is to race in the desert and not on the highway, getting from California over to the Arizona side. In fact, if you decide to break the double nickels in California, one of those guys will pull you over and remind you that you are breaking the law. Well, let's take a look at the standings now here at the Parker 400 after lap number 1. Ivan Stewart leading the way in Class 1, Bob Gordon in Class 2.
And there's a surprise in the making. Jerry McDonald leads Rod Hall in Class 4.
Then, as you see, the other classes, Class 8, Frank Vessel's out in front.
And some of the other classes here, no real surprises there so far, Marty.
So stay with us, because the Parker 400 is just 1 lap down. We've got 2 to go over in Arizona. Welcome back to the Parker 400. I'm Marty Reed along with Jerry Garrett, and this is the start-finish line for the 2 96-mile laps on the Arizona side on Shea Road, about 6 miles east of Parker. And thank you for the welcome. We sure do have the spirit, too. Now, the cars were transported here after finishing the California Loop.
Now, reports from Score's timing crew show that the buggy of Bob Gordon and Tim Crabtree, with Crabtree at the wheel, is now first in Class 2 and overall. They're 2 minutes ahead of Steve Serapis and Dave Richardson in class, and just under 2 minutes ahead of Ivan Stewart for overall honors.
This is the 751, the AC Delco Chevrolet in the 4-wheel drive mini truck class with former IndyCar pilot Jeff McPherson at the wheel.
Jeff's time away from the sport doesn't seem to have had much effect on his competitiveness, though, because we show him as the class leader after the first lap, and he's got almost a minute on Paul Simon.
Now, he manages to pass this Challenger class entry of Mike and Joel Stankovic without any problems either. So Jeff McPherson looking good in his first return to off-road racing. Now, here's the 1030 Raceco VW of Mike and Wayne Withers, and that's another brother team. Well, that's rough terrain right there, too.
Yeah, it certainly is. Now we're looking at number 1605. That's Pete McCowan and Dennis Fry in a Raceco VW.
Having a tough time of it, but still plugging along. 563, one of the unlimited Baja Bug entries. It's being driven by Mike Jones and Russ Simmons. They're from Portland, Oregon. I didn't know they had deserts up there.
Here's another family outing. In 573 are brothers Derry and Wayne Cook of Palmdale, California.
Getting the green flag now for his restart is Jerry McDonald, and after the first lap we show him with a 14-minute advantage over Rod Hall, who we understand had some problems with spider gears on his Dodge. Now, Rodney was not the happiest man in the world when Nissan and Chevrolet brought out new trucks last year with some radical design features. But here's what he has to say now.
Yeah, well, I want to clarify that, Garrett. You know, last year I did do some criticism on a couple of trucks that came in. But, you know, after looking that over, I think that's the wave of the new trucks for the 1990s. And, you know, it's just like when new things come in, sometimes you don't really take a good perspective and take a hard look at what it's all about. But these are race trucks. We are racing, and so you have to keep up to date. So I'm not opposed to that. I think that's great. It's good for the sport. You got to move ahead. But we've also looked and taken a hard look and watched them run and see exactly how they work, and we think that we can still be very competitive with a truck. And I mean a truck that has a frame under it, a Dodge frame. It's got a cab. It's got all Dodge running gear in it, and it's got leaf springs like it comes. I'm not knocking anybody else. I'm just saying we think that we can use our technology and refine that production type vehicle and make it a real race truck.
Now, he should have a new truck sometime later this year, but it's hard to argue with his theories there because he's had some pretty good success over the years with a real race truck. And last season he won 6 of 8 races and another class championship.
Well, now we get another look at the 205 Martin brother entry with Tom Martin at the wheel now. And we show them in 5th, about 5 minutes behind the Gordon Crabtree combination after 1 lap.
Now this is 1616, the reliable lumber Chenoweth of Willie Higman.
Yeah, but somebody's right behind him blowing the horn. Wait a minute. It looks like Roger Mears has run into trouble. He had a 21-minute lead on Manny Esquerra after the California Loop, but that may not matter now. Roger and co-driver Tony Alvarez do not act like they have much hope of continuing in this race.
Oh, tough luck. Roger's misfortune, though, is good news for Larry Ragland in 704. Larry was down in 4th place, almost a half an hour back after the first lap.
Well, he's going to be going by them soon, and I'm sure the adrenaline will begin to pump for Larry Ragland. Here's 808 Scoop Vessels in that new Chevrolet. He was 3 minutes up on Robbie Gordon in the 801 vehicle starting the second lap, and he looks to be plowing his way well through the heavy silt in this Arizona side. And here's the 814 Steve McEachern, who was third after the first lap, about 6 minutes back. 1634, this is Gail Klein and Mark Manley. Remember when they got stuck over, whoa, look out, remember when they got stuck in California? Let's take another look, Jerry.
Well, they get a little out of rhythm here, Marty, going over the bumps, and that carries the front end a little too far out, and he buries it in the slope. That doesn't make for the softest of landings.
Well, there's the 542 Baja Bug of Gene Norman and John Murray out of Riverside, California. They look to be handling it very well.
This is an area called the Osborne Wash, which is right off the Arizona starting line, and it's sandy and silty and a little bumpy, and everyone seems to have his own line through it.
Well, here's another look at Pete McCowan and Dennis Fry in their Raceco as they go flying by. And then this is the second place man in Class 8 after the first lap, Robbie Gordon in the 66 Ford that started life as a farm truck. Rob's only 18, and he's got a great future.
Now, it's going to take him a little while, though, Marty, to make the transition from buggies to trucks. They handle it a little differently, but he's doing real well to be up in second place at this point. We understand that he drove most of the first lap with no brakes. That doesn't help.
Especially when it comes time to make a left or right turn. But right now, Robbie Gordon looks to be doing very well as he's flying off into the distance. Some of the crowd on hand today, and here's the General George Patton Memorial Award winner for best use of camouflage. That's Dave Chrysler and Curly Nobles in the Raceco. Of course, the camouflage isn't terribly effective in the desert.
Now, this is 219. This is a Toyota-powered vehicle. That's a rarity. It's in a Dirt Tricks chassis driven by Paul Nolde and Conrad Monroe of Phoenix.
Now, this looks like our mini-stock truck leader, Larry Knoll. He's the second vehicle there. Both of the pre-race favorites in the class apparently have had trouble. And tell us about, Jerry. I think you've got some information there.
Well, we understand Spencer Lowe has rolled his Nissan, and the Chuck Johnson Scott Douglas Ford Ranger has been slowed by some mechanical problems. So that means there's some new names on the leaderboard.
Oh, it's a Ford sweep at the moment, too, with Knoll about 3 minutes up on Willie Valdez and 10 minutes ahead of Steve Luport. Now, we do not show either Lowe or the Johnson Douglas truck in the top 10 right now. So stay with us. We will be back with more to bring from Parker, Arizona in the Score Parker 400. Marty Reed and Jerry Garrett back with you at the Parker 400 in Parker, Arizona. And the man you're looking at out in the middle of nowhere, that is Scoop Vessel, still out in front and on the gas in Class 8.
Now, Marty, as we mentioned at the top of the show, Scoop was forced to retire his truck at the end of last season. The rules changed. It's made it obsolete. And that had Scoop thinking about taking a sabbatical from the sport to concentrate on his horse racing businesses. Then he and John Nelson got together with Chevrolet and put together a deal. And Scoop says one of the things he likes best about this new arrangement is that he's just the driver now. He's got a crew chief and a whole bunch of people working for him to work on those other little details.
Well, here's Steve McEachern in 814, and he is not giving Vessels any time to relax. He's staying well within striking distance of the leader should Vessels have any problems.
Now, here's Tim Crabtree. He's trying to maintain the pace that his teammate Bob Gordon set when he led the first lap, and they're keeping their Chenoweth out front right now.
But close behind, here's the